Double R, number 10. Really pumped on this one. Senator Reichenbach, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. Honored to be here.
I ran into you at Bean Bar the other morning, which I love doing.
I love coffee, so I'm a better version of myself with coffee.
You had like 6 cups of coffee, and I'm like, hold on, who all are you bringing that to? It's like, no, it's just for us.
That's just Sharice and I. We double fisted. Yeah. 29 years of marriage, you make it work with coffee.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I love when you're in Bean Bar and interacting with everybody in there. It inspires me every time. I find myself the next morning I'm in there, I'm talking to more people. I'm like, hold on, I want to be more like you.
Yeah, Sharice and I just are in nature is that we love being with people and our people. We consider this like our tribe. Florence County is our tribe. So it's not uncommon that what should be a 10-minute trip to the grocery store will take 30 or 40 minutes just because we see a lot of folks.
It's amazing.
Where did that love for people, where would you see that developing? How did that come about in your life?
That's a great question. It's a bit of a digression, but realizing how grateful I am for my life. You probably different venues or different civic events, you've heard some of my story perhaps, but when my biological mom, who was 14, and she put me up for adoption, and I went into foster care, and then I get adopted by just such a great family, and I'm taught about faith and people and about we all go through things, but it's not what you go through, it's how you go through it, and it's a very loving God that helps you navigate it. Candidly, over the last 53 years of my life, I've developed such an appreciation for people. We all struggle. Doesn't matter how much you're worth or what family you're born into or where you were raised. I've learned that life will gut punch you. Yeah. And it's either coming, you're in the middle of it, or you're coming out of it, but we're all going to get a gut punch or a throat punch from time to time. So be kind to people. And I love being with people because the more authentic people are, the more you realize that life isn't easy, but we're meant to be fellowshipping with one another. And I love people for that reason.
That one hug you give somebody at Bean Bar that morning and a word of encouragement, that could change the course of the rest of their life, honestly. And I think if we show that to young kids, that's what's been on my heart lately is the young kids, in our town here. Mm-hmm. A lot of them are growing up in some really hard situations. And what do we do to help? What can we do? What is the best thing we can do?
Yeah, one of the most challenging aspects of the Senate is when one of the chairmen of a committee realized that I've got a real heart for children, and then he asked me to be the subcommittee chairman for child welfare for the Senate. Mm-hmm. Hearing the stories of young people and realizing I would almost use the word insurmountable. They're not insurmountable because I do believe there's a very loving God who can help us navigate it, and there's people that are put in our paths. But it's close to insurmountable when you're 6 and all night your mom has been fighting with her boyfriend, and then you get in the middle of it and you're beat up, and you haven't eaten, and you haven't slept, and you're expected to function the next day of school. You're 6 or 7 or 8. You're not even prepared to handle life on your own. You're still a child, but you're having to deal with adult level consequences and adult level issues. The chasm between being okay and not being okay becomes very, very narrow at that point.
Yes.
I'm not making excuses for people who make bad decisions, even youth who make bad decisions. But there's a point where we got to step back and be like, look, the nuclear family, a family with a mom and a dad who cultivate and discipline and love and raise a child is a better dynamic than the streets raising a child. Yes. Or a gang raising a child or the neighborhood raising a child. I think we've gotten away from the family. And to your point, hugging someone sometimes is enough to help them realize that, you know what, I can make it through one more day. And I'll take one more day, one more step, and it's going to be okay.
Definitely, yeah.
Senator, we read a story, tell us if it's true, that you had a lemonade stand when you were a little kid, and maybe that was your first entry into business. Maybe it was a one-time thing, or maybe it was ongoing. But if that's true, or maybe even if it's not, you're certainly a businessman. And what about the idea of getting, like we were talking before the podcast, maybe setting up a lemonade type stand at the farmers market downtown in Florence and inviting young kids, 6, 7, 8, from different areas of the city, maybe impoverished areas, and inviting them to come and see what it's like to actually run a little business as a way of giving them a vision for economic.
Unlocking entrepreneurship. You know, when you sell lemonade as a kid and you work and make that money, it unlocks something in you. And I think we need to figure out a way to help put that in motion for some kids that might not get that opportunity.
Yeah, I'm a proponent of any idea that gives hope.
Yes.
Hope is underestimated. I think there's a place for all of our lives, but in particular for those who have a real tough time growing up, a place for hope that needs to be instilled by those like us in this room and those of you who are listening. What hope is the difference between giving up and succumbing to elements that are going to either lead you to be incarcerated or to be homeless or to be on the streets or to be just your worst version of yourself. And then you insert hope, and it gives somebody the opportunity to say, I can be better than my circumstances. I can achieve more than what I've seen. It is such a challenge to have a young person who has grown up in a cycle of poverty.
Yes.
And what I've realized is poverty isn't a black or a white or a Hispanic thing. Poverty and the challenges that come with it transcends all aspects of community. But expecting a young person to just organically pull yourself up by your bootstraps, it's unreasonable. We've got to give hope. And I love ideas of letting them see, man, here's how you can turn a nickel into a dime and a dime into a quarter and a quarter into a dollar. And there's opportunities for you.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think government's too involved in the sense of trying to solve that problem versus the private sector? And how do we balance, private sector and faith-based initiatives and empowering the private sector and faith-based initiatives compared to government stepping in and trying to solve some of those problems? How do we all work together to do that?
Boy, that's a great question. We could take up the rest of this podcast with them. I'm serious. That is such a pivotal question that our society and our country is going through right now. I mean, and there's frankly folks on the other side of the aisle. I'm going to give you a position that is very, very pro the private enterprise, the nonprofits, the church's role, because I don't think government solves problems well. But I acknowledge, by the way, that at the last election, I believe, 75 million people voted for a very leftist agenda versus 78 million voted for a very different agenda. So I'm not necessarily in the vast majority. In this country, there's quite a bifurcation. But to answer the question, there's a core function of government that needs to be done. Infrastructure, public services, water, sewer, gas. I mean, there's a lot to be said as far as the core functions of the government, but I don't think it's the government's role to try to be the long-term fix there. Let me see if I can get this right. There's an adage about what happens when the government gives you $1. The first time they give you $1, you appreciate it. The second time they give you $1, you anticipate it. The third time they give you $1, you expect it. The fourth time the government gives you $1, you are entitled to it. And the fifth time they give you $1, you're now dependent on it.
Wow.
And if you look at that progression from appreciation to dependency, that's not helping people. That's enslaving people. That is financial enslavement when they say, I need the government to help me, and you're an able-bodied person. Like faith is a big part of who I am and what I believe in. The Bible's very clear. If you are able-bodied and you don't work, you don't eat. How we got to a place in our society where, if you don't work, that's okay. The government will provide for you. That is political enslavement, using financial resources to tie you up. And it's for political gain, but I think we do better as a society, and we help families grow, we help individuals grow when we give them opportunities to work. Our tech system is so good here. There's opportunities to go to school, to get a trade certificate or an associate's degree and come out with virtually no debt and be gainfully employed. But you got to work. in a mindset that says, don't worry about it, the government will take care of you, that is counterproductive to society, and I think it erodes who we are. You all work. A dollar earned is respected more than a dollar given.
Yeah,
It's a long answer, and I could just keep going.
That's
but-
excellent, but it's
Yeah.
this old adage, teaching someone to fish instead of giving them a fish.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, it does something for your soul. I mean, when you work hard and you feel good about that day, it's how we're made.
Yeah.
We're incentivizing to not do that. That doesn't work.
It is so counterproductive to developing good people
Yeah.
in good society to say, no, you stay home. I will give you that dollar, and I'll do it over and over and over. Now, it is effective if your goal is to make them reliant upon you and dependent upon you, but it's not effective if you want a good society.
Do you feel like we are seeing a little shift away from that, though? We're trying to shift. Hopefully.
I think there's a component that is trying to shift that. Look, there are those who understand that financial dependency equates to power because it equates to votes. I mean, imagine if you're an elected official and you tell somebody, if you vote for me, I will enable you to not have to work. I will provide for you. That's a pretty effective selling point. Now, it's not long-term productive for them, but it's a pretty effective selling point. So I think there are those who are saying, look, this shouldn't be a partisan issue. This should be an issue about what's better for humanity. But we'd also be, we'd be lying to ourselves to tell us that everyone who's an elected official or even anyone in this society is altruistic in their motivations.
Yeah.
So this podcast is all about helping Florence move forward. We're two guys who are from Florence. You're from Florence as well, or
Not originally, but
not
been here
originally, but
going
been
on
here
2 decades.
Yeah, two
Yeah.
decades.
It's home now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What do you see as the greatest assets for Florence, and how can we move Florence forward?
Yeah, the greatest asset. My answer would have been different before politics, but now being in the state Senate and looking at a broader state perspective versus when we just had the businesses here, I think our greatest asset here is that we're underdogs. And what I mean by that is there's the corridor of power, I-26. You got the upstate in Greenville, Spartanburg. You got the Midlands in Columbia, Lexington, and you got the Low Country with Charleston, North Charleston, Dorchester County there. That's where the majority of the population centers are, and that's where a majority of the legislative power is because of redistricting and how districting works, and it's based upon population. That's where a majority of the dollars go. The PD region, and in particular Florence County as the hub of the PD, we're underdogs. We have to work harder. If you ever watched the movie Rudy, you ever see that, Rudy?
Oh yeah.
How do you not like a guy who says, punch me in the mouth? I'm okay with the taste of my own blood. I'll work that much harder to be successful. And I think what Florence has the opportunity to do is saying, okay, we're not Greenville or Columbia or Charleston. You know what? We're okay with that. Let us be who we are, and we're going to work harder. We're going to do better. We're going to put ourselves in a position to be successful, even when there's a corridor that would say, yeah, don't really worry about Florence and the PD. I love being an underdog to some respect. I've been a Gamecock fan for almost 20 years. I know what it's like to be an underdog right there. I mean,
That hurts this week
perpetual underdog. Let's tell you, and it's like, I thought I would have made it past game 3 before I lost to, all hope. We're not losing hope yet. As Gamecocks, we always
That's
have
right.
hope.
We got
So
hope.
your daughter's a sophomore.
She graduated from Carolina, and our
she's
son,
already graduated?
she graduated already, and our son's a senior at Carolina.
Senior. Oh,
Senior, yeah. So we got 2 Gamecocks, yeah. But I say all that to say, we as Florence being the hub of the PD, realize we've got challenges that the coast doesn't have, or the Midlands doesn't have, or the upstate doesn't have. But we also have potential to say, you know what, we're going to punch above our weight class.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
How do you think the I-95, I-20 corridor, as well as the potential airport opportunity, the airport that we have and the land and the expansion there and bringing industry in, how does all that fit into us punching above our weight class.
Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic when you're at the intersection of two interstates, and we've got a railway system here.
Yeah.
We've got an airport. We've got the inland port that is here in the PD. Those are all great. It's not necessarily a complete game changer because, there's interstates in the upstate and in the Midlands and in the low country too. So they're important, but I think what's more important are the people that'll be working on these interstates and that'll be working here at the airport and at the inland port there and on the railway. We've got a workforce here within the PD, and I think it's important to make the distinction. It's not just a Florence County workforce. I think we need to look at our workforce as a PD workforce because it's not uncommon for folks to drive in from Dillon or Marion or Darlington or Clio. I mean, I could just keep going and going. Johnsonville, Pamplico, such great communities. So if we look at our workforce as a PD workforce, we can punch above a weight class, and we've got hardworking people here, folks who want to get up and they want to go to work.
Yeah, the people that grow up in the country, they know how to work in a little different way.
That's right. Bale hay for a summer
Yeah,
and realize what you don't want to do in life.
Working
That's
in air
right.
conditioning is
Exactly
no
right.
problem.
Throwing square bales, you're like,
No
okay, I think I'd rather find somewhere else to work. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've got a bright future, a lot ahead of us. I honestly, knowing that you're representing us and what you do makes me more encouraged and feel great about our community and where we're headed. And anytime there's something you think, man, maybe Robert and Reeves would be good to help with this or do it, we're here. Let us know what you see we can do.
Well, I really do appreciate that. And one thing I'd ask is get the message out how important family is.
Okay.
Teachers are leaving the teaching profession, the education profession, in large numbers. And Sharice and I say Sharice and I, I'm technically the senator, but for 29 years, we do life together. She's my partner in business. She's my wife. She's my co-senator. She's my chief advisor. She's in the Senate every day with me in the chambers. And when we go around and we talk to many, many schools, we go in, we talk to the faculty members, we read to kids. But when we have the one-on-ones with the teachers, what we hear often is that it isn't just the money why they leave. I mean, right now, the General Assembly has worked to get the starting teacher pay to almost $50,000, which is not an insulting pay.
Right.
I'd love it to be more,
Yeah.
but that's not an insulting pay right there. But one reason teachers are leaving in large numbers is they say, look, I went to school and I've got a heart to teach. I didn't sign up to discipline and raise and essentially have to stand in as a parent in some of these schools. And that's not fair to ask a 23 or 24-year-old who just graduated to come in and say, hey, when Johnny or Susie didn't get a good night's meal, a good night's sleep, and they didn't get fed breakfast, and they didn't have dinner last night, and they listened to quarreling all night long, and then we are asking you to teach them and to wonder why they're acting out and why there's aggression issues. We got elementary schoolers who are cussing out their teachers.
Yeah.
That's not okay. And to ask a teacher to just, go along with that and do the best you can, but then promote them up. And they can't read and they can't do math, but you just want to make it somebody else's problem. All we're doing is creating a deficit in our workforce, a deficit in our consumer base. We are driving these children to a pipeline of incarceration, of non-graduation, of illiteracy. We've got to stop that and say, look, parents need to parent and allow teachers to teach.
That is the root problem. We've identified it. Now we've got to start figuring out
That's right.
what little things we can do to start chipping away at it.
That's right. That's absolutely right. One thing is our social services needs to be revamped because as it stands, the more children you have out of wedlock, the more you are compensated. Now, I get it. You also want those dollars to go to children because you want kids to eat. But there's a point where we got to step back and say, does it make sense to incentivize a woman to have more children and to not be married? Because if you have now a second wage earner in that home, that affects how much you are given by the state. Sharice and I have heard it verbatim from women who say, I'd like to get married, but if I do, I lose some of this much money from the state. Man, that's not helping anybody.
We got to change that.
Well, and obviously, Charlie Kirk and all of that is in the news. And I've watched, since his death some videos of him, and he spoke about that, how the federal government has incentivized basically single-parent homes. And these are complicated, difficult issues.
That's right.
And I think, and you may disagree, I don't know, I want to give the benefit of the doubt to our politicians that they were good intentioned to come in and solve an issue that they saw. But again, government's probably not the best suited to solve that problem.
Yeah.
And so everything's better when we get smaller local problem-solving ideas. And that's, the opportunity we have here in Florence, Darlington County, where you serve, and I know that's your heartbeat. And
Yeah. And we agree, by the way, that government, even if the original design of the welfare system and the social services and the child support or the food stamp issue, if all of that was made with the best of intentions, it was never meant to be a lifestyle that somebody got on it and they stayed on it for essentially their entire life, and then they raise another generation on it, who raises another generation on it. It was meant to be a small, temporary stopgap measure while we looked to get people gainfully employed so they could take care of themselves. Government is a behemoth that is relentless in what they will consume. Every tax dollar that you give them and I give them and you give them, every tax dollar government will spend. There is no threshold. There is no filter. And if we look at government from the perspective of it's not their money, it's our money, hopefully we'd be a little more judicious in saying, all right, let's stop acting like this money grows from a tree and it just keeps being developed without any input from us. It's not government's money, it's our money.
in relation to that, I saw a post you put on Facebook last week, and this is important to us because we're real estate guys, and y'all are having some discussion about tax reductions and property tax reductions compared to income tax reductions. So just tell us a little bit about that conversation that's going on.
Yeah, that's a great question. The last several years within the General Assembly, there's been a lot of conversation about should we work to reduce the state income tax. And when you talk to most people and say, would you like your state income taxes to be lower? The answer is yes. Eventually, even eliminated, such as they've done in Tennessee and Florida and Texas. But we're having more constituents who reach out to Sharice and I and say, okay, income tax is great, but how about we talk about property tax? How is it reasonable that you have a home and you even eventually pay for your home, that you no lien on it anymore, there's no mortgage, but yet you still have to pay property taxes that increase each year? At what point do you ever own your own home as your property taxes increase? You throw into that scenario those who have rental properties, and you understand how the legal residence exemption works. When you have a rental property, you're paying a lot more in taxes. Same home, same square footage, same acreage, but you're still paying a lot more. That expense just gets passed on to your renters to a degree. So we talk about the need for affordable housing, yet we want to have this, 6% on the second home, and then you see that expense get passed on to your renters. That doesn't make it more affordable, it makes it less affordable. Isn't there space to talk about a property tax reduction? And I understand there's a need for the core function of government, even at the county level, right? And I've talked, some county folks have reached out to me and said, oh, did you really need to make that post? Well, yeah, you know what? In fairness, I don't report to an entity. I report to the voters who put us in there, and the voters are saying, property tax is something that if we had our choice between property tax reduction and income tax reduction, there are many, not all, but there are many who have said, let's talk about the property tax reduction.
Yeah, I mean, I know as a rental owner, rents on the properties I own are easily a couple of $100s more a month because of the excessive property tax that's due. So that would be real dollars back in people's pockets.
Right.
If we could somehow get that type of reduction. But is it, property taxes go to local entity and income tax goes to the state and then is divvied out. So is there the same?
Yeah, essentially the construct of how income tax is handled and the construct of how property tax is handled are different. What would need to happen for this conversation to really get some traction is almost a waiver that says if the county has a reduction in their property tax based upon legislation that we make, that the state is going to, essentially help with that mandate. So you can't have an unfunded mandate. So if county roads, county water, county sewer needs to be addressed, then the state's going to need to realize, okay, they're going to need to play a bigger role. So the goal is that you don't lower one tax just to raise another tax.
Right.
First of all, we have to reduce spending. Spending should only be made on core functions. If you remember some years ago, there was that money spent for the Carolina Panthers, a practice facility up in York County there.
Yeah.
Why are we putting money, state dollars, taxpayer dollars, into a practice facility for the Carolina Panthers so that we can say the South Carolina has a portion of the Carolina Panther? That's not a core function of government.
Right.
But if we just focused on the core function of government and reduce spending in other areas, there'd be an opportunity, I think, for the state government to realize that if property taxes are going to go down, which makes sense because property tax is not dependent upon what you're earning. So your state income tax may not go down as quickly as people would like, but then as you are earning money, you're paying a tax on that. But if we look at sales tax be an opportunity to offset some of that property tax reduction there. You got a lot of travelers. I think the last number I heard was in the fiscal year, 14 million people visited the Grand Strand, Horry County. 14 million. That's a lot of sales tax dollars that are paid by those who are visiting. Now, I think that's reasonable because they're using our resources. They're using our roads. They're using our water. They're using our sewer. They're using our public services. Let them pay a portion of it as opposed to rents being raised another couple $100 on folks who are living here in our state.
I think we're finally getting a little bit of that money out of Buc-ee's. I think Buc-ee's is helping us grab a little bit. I'm confident if we lowered property tax, income tax, the receipts will go up. We already see people are moving to South Carolina from higher tax states like New York, California, all over, because their property taxes are crazy.
That's right.
We already see it's working, but if we could get it down more, this place will take off.
That's right.
I know it would.
And what we're hearing from constituents is on the income tax, if we can't eliminate it right now, there should be a flat income tax. If you make $100,000, then you should pay your, call it 4%. If you make 200, pay your 4. If you make 50, pay your 4%. It's a percentage of what you earn. Higher earners pay more money, but not a higher percentage.
Yeah.
I've heard from several people say that they'd accept that if the property tax reduction or elimination could get to the point where once you own something, it is yours. On watercraft, you could pay a property tax on a boat. You could pay a property tax on the motor. Pay a property tax on the trailer. Is that reasonable? I mean, come on.
You just sold yours.
I just sold my boat.
Yeah, okay.
And I saved a pile of money because
Yeah.
I sold it, and I'm happy to have
I got to do
deployed
one
that
more
capital
plug. I know you're
somewhere
busy
else.
and need to leave. Just got my wife the new Expedition. I'm telling you, if people will go sit in that new Expedition, they're getting that over the Yukon.
They're really pleased
It
with the
is
vehicle from
nice.
the response from customers, and thank you for that opportunity.
Oh, thank you guys. It was amazing. At Reichenbach Ford, I mean, everyone was awesome.
Thank you.
It was great.
Thank you. It's going on 20 years that Sharice and I have owned the dealership, and we are grateful for all the customers. We did the math the other day, and I think it's like 14,000 vehicles we've sold in our 20 years. So we're really grateful for the opportunity.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I'm always willing to talk to you guys, to our constituents. Sharice and I love hearing from those who are in our district. So reach out if something's on your mind. That's why the property tax and the income tax discussion was such a great conversation to have, because as it turns out, about 70% of the people would prefer a property tax reduction versus income tax. We would not have known that. It would have been anecdotal had we not asked the question.
Yeah, count me in on that.
Yeah, right.
I didn't respond to your post, but
Yeah.
count me in on let's reduce property tax.
That's great.
Thanks for everything.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.